So, hey, what's up, world? Welcome to the Suburban Saturn. My name is Ed, and I am your host. I guess this is my formal introduction to YouTube, and I really just wanted to introduce myself a little bit and what this channel is about. And if this finds you, hello, I hope you're doing great, and I hope that wherever you are, you're living an intentional life, and you're happy, and you're healthy. So, welcome. All right, I guess I should start off with a little bit of background. Who I am. My name is Ed, as I said, and I'm a data professional. I live in Southern California. My daytime job is a business intelligence analytics engineer. I develop pipelines, dashboards, reporting objects, systems for different individuals across the organization that I work for, and as well as our partners. So I do a lot of that in the daytime, and then in the evening I like to read, write, code. I enjoy surfing. It's kind of hard to do that in the evening, but on the weekends when I get the chance. And I enjoy soccer. Just generally being outside. Even though I do spend a stupid amount of time behind the computer, and I'm spending some more time right now. Hello. It gets worse if I don't get to have my time outside and play. Anyways, hello. That's the weirdo I am, and I'm creating this channel because, well, a few things. I feel like I can share some insights or highlight some events or things out in the world that might be useful for you, the audience here, whomever you are. Hello. To navigate through life a little bit more cleanly, and ultimately the goal of this particular channel is to provide you at least with some value with how to navigate through the world with more intention, and hopefully inspire you to take action and motivates you to take action, because in this channel I will be sharing not only my ideas but my writings, my projects, things that I'm trying to put out there in the world for us, for regular folk like you and I, cyber folk who are out here in the real world and also in here in the digital one, talking to ourselves through this medium. So basically it is a liminal space where I will go ahead and reflect at you and showcase things that I'm working on, and through that hopefully it can inspire some action on your end so that you can help us out in this project of sense making and developing better systems to navigate the world. And if you're watching this channel, you're probably a systems thinker. You're probably someone out there in the world, some professional working at some goal larger than just yourself. And if that is who you are, I see you, and I hope you bring into fruition the vision and actualization of the vision that you have. So welcome here, and hopefully we can create a community here where people are builders, not just thinkers, and are interested in serving their communities, even if you're localized elsewhere. The framework, the intention, the humanity remains the same no matter where you are. So if you're out there and you think that way, you are my people. Is that over the past 4 or 5 years, I had been working at expanding my skill set in tech, in data in particular. I mean, I've taken every Google certification out there. I'm just kidding. I've only taken the analytics ones, but I have taken the entry-level analytics and the advanced analytics for both Google offered via Coursera. And I also took some of the meta ones, the specialization, the back end, as well as software development, which teaches you how to set up an application from scratch using the Django framework, plugging it into some database. It was a MySQL one, and then writing APIs that performs certain functionalities across the application. And yeah, all these things were great. They're great resources. Honestly, I recommend taking every single one of them. You can get hooked on really taking these courses and expanding your skill sets without ever really applying them, though. So when I finally got to, I don't know, fast forward 2025, I've been working as a data professional for about 3 to 4 years now. Um, I finally decided to take an AWS exam at the current company I'm at. We use AWS a lot, so it made sense that if I was going to start working off of a cloud environment, to work off of one that I already had some familiarity with. So AWS was my choice for certification, but there are obviously other certifications out there. In any case, the AWS certification was unlike any of the other training I had gotten up to this point, because the Coursera ones, for example, they give you some exam that's kind of not really proctored. It's just multiple choice. You could take it over again and again and again. You don't really have to try too hard, if you know what I'm saying, to pass it. But it's not so much the case for the AWS one. The AWS one will offer you multiple choices, but all choices are very plausible, and they do try to trick you. Mind the cost and mind the efficiency. They don't always mean the same thing, and you could use different tech stacks within AWS to achieve the goals, but it won't necessarily translate to each other. Take, for example, efficient might mean cleaner, more compute power, and more and more storage capacity, which translates to more expensive. So definitely not the cheaper option, so the cheaper option would probably always default to some AWS service like Glue, S3, Athena, something that's working off of those kinds of stacks, Lambda, etc. So in any case, they do test for your context awareness of a problem as well and try to trick you. So it's tricky. The only thing I kind of didn't like about the AWS data engineer associates is that they didn't give you really a way to apply your skills at the end of it. So they test you, and the test is hard, but once you get it, you only get a badge, and that's it. And I'm so used to providing some sort of deliverable. The Google certification has a dashboard that you provide to I guess you have at the end of it to showcase in your portfolio. The same with Meta. You provide a web application with the code on GitHub and all that to showcase and walk through what you did and the API you scripted, etc. So you always have some sort of deliverable to showcase the skills you've obtained through the coursework. And AWS doesn't really do that. So along the way, I started to develop my own application, which was meant to be an AWS serverless app that was going to showcase my skill sets on AWS, right? So basically, it was portfolio padding. I was going to go ahead and be like, hey, look, this is what I can build on AWS, going serverless and controlling cost and designing for quick retrieval from the database and a way to integrate some of the large language models that they offer as a service through Bedrock. In my application, I use Claude Haiku to generate summaries based off of reflection posts captured in the application. And I'll get into the design in later videos and what this application actually is. For right now, I'm just kind of talking at you about how I got to this point in making this video and what's kicking off the series of, I guess, videos to come. In any case, I built the application for AWS, and in doing so, I had to put on a bunch of different hats, right? When you're building an application from scratch, you're basically thinking as a product designer, as a user experience thinker, a systems architect, privacy and security, and scalability, number one, right? So basically, you're trained to think in this framework, in this paradigm of you're designing a product, right? That's digital. how is the user going to get engagement from that? How are they going to, what is their experience going to be like? Your core product, how is it serviceable? How are you designing a system that's serviceable for this kind of fulfillment, right? So if you're moving inventory, right, you might want to apply a different kind of foundational architecture, as opposed to if you're strictly only aggregating data from a bunch of IoTs. The kind of systems architect you have underneath the aggregation of that data and the storage and the movement of that data is going to be different than, say, the inventory kind, or than, say, sales, or capturing sales in application, or compliance, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, there are ways of approaching designing an application that have a bunch of assumptions baked into them, right? How do we scale this thing? Always scale, right? You need to make money. How do you make money from this? How do you drive up engagement? How do we keep the costs low? The whole paradigm of product design, UX thinking, systems architect, privacy and security, and scalability is usually all abstracted in the service of higher user engagement translates to more money, right? And some scale going up, especially if you have a fractional model there to try to drive profit. So these assumptions of scale, systems architect, the scaling and fulfillment of the product always inform everything else. How we're going to design the system, how we're going to protect it, what we should protect, what we shouldn't, how much data we need to capture, how much data we don't, what we should capture, in order to perform more advanced analytics and basically start treating the individual user as a lab. Question a lot of these assumptions, right? Well, why are we designing a systems architecture, right? That's only based on scalability of profit, really, or of engagement, rather than of well-being and happiness. And obviously this isn't I'm not the first to think of these kinds of things. Of course, there's been human-centered capitalism around this idea of redirecting the profit incentives. And let me give you an example. GDP, right? The productivity of a nation does not necessarily translate to the happiness of that nation's subjects. And so we might be doing great, in GDP, but that shouldn't be taken as a measure of success at the interpersonal level or even societal level, because we understand that those goods aren't distributed amongst all the people who help the productivity numbers stay up. And so basically, in designing Aurelius, I had to start for grounding my intention behind it, because again, I am a deep thinker, and as a result, I ruin everything. You can't just make money and be happy with it, because if you're not actually providing value that you feel at the bottom of your heart is right, then you're just never going to be in alignment. And I like to be in alignment, so my design first principles had to start at that level. Like, as a user, if I am going to be consuming an AI powered product, what are the guardrails I would like around it, and what would be ethical and what would not, and is this design, the scalability of it is not necessarily meant for profit at all. Actually, it's meant for well-being, so basically the success of this design is going to be measured by not your engagement necessarily, right, but rather how much agency and how much more empowerment you have. Now, measuring that is everything. That's the whole problem, right? Because then that's when we run into this one little issue, or many issues actually, that seem kind of like non-consequential because they're so pie in the sky, they're so abstracted. We're talking about different ontological information frameworks. We're talking about metaphysics. We're talking about how we basically the cutting edge of how we understand the brain, of when the ephemeral becomes material. And so that's that's a lot. I mean, you have to contend with some big questions. That research kind of led down to the development of a Bergsonian based framework, if you will, that's kind of a design ethics framework around creating applications in the future and keeping in mind the well-being, and how to use AI as opposed to how we are currently using AI, because the way we currently use AI is not it's not necessarily to help us be better versions of ourselves. It's to basically get shit done, right? And that's all great and that's all good, but with that, starts coming all these kinds of issues like, can chat really be a good therapist, right? What about people who were basically getting a sycophantic model that basically led them to do atrocious things, right? Like kill themselves and basically, these are things that were not thought through. Of course, it's the way America is designed. Our economic system really is a sandbox for companies to go ahead and experiment on the public with. And really, we don't know the guardrails until things begin to break, right? You break the psyche of the individual that is using your device, and all of a sudden, you have a good reason to have ethics boards in your company and organization. So that's the only time it ever becomes consequential. But you don't realize that you're already operating from a corrupted moral grounding. Your design is in fact extractive and it's meant to commodify and objectify the individual and make them legible and basically transform them into cash cows. And that is where the big, I guess that is where already we're in unethical territory, or so I would argue. So you already have built the ground by which, you already built the application in corrupted grounds and have built a whole infrastructure and ecosystem or in corrupted grounds. So unpacking that question, researching it, tackling it, figuring out better ways to design applications in the age of AI so that humans do not forget their autonomy, that they don't basically outsource their autonomy to ChatGPT and say, hey, Chat, tell me how I feel, or hey, Claude, tell me how I feel. We already do that a lot with like Aura rings and Apple Watches and closing your rings in the Apple Watch. It's like, pushing you to behave in certain ways, I guess. And it could be seen as a good thing, of course, but, at the end of it, not everything is necessarily oriented in the service of being necessarily good for you, right? Nudging you to use your device for that is in the first place, right? To use it all the time, to basically have it tell you how you ought to feel based on the data you've been I guess recording, your steps, your heart rate. All that is a big issue, actually, and it's what we need to first warn people against falling into that trap. And this is where I evoke Bergson, and I'll have some more video essays on that. In any case, all this is to say that my AWS journey led me to developing an application, but before being able to develop that application, which is I already have a dev version out there, and I'm more than happy to share it with you guys if you reach out or in the comment section, leave a comment there. I'll whitelist you and your email, and actually don't leave your email down there. Message me in some way. I don't know. I'll leave some links below, but I will share this application eventually, and I want it. Getting way ahead of myself. So yeah, we went from learning how to use the cloud to developing an application, but the concept of developing the application and its design, was a lot of research and is still an ongoing question. How to basically design an application with a strong, ethically grounded design framework that doesn't fall into the trap of making the end user the object or the commodity or the product, right? But rather providing them with an enhanced agency and judgment, and empowering them and reminding them that they are in the driver's seat. And basically what Bergson would call reification, when we mistake the data for the actual thing, i.e. my Apple rings being closed equals me having a good sense of well-being because I accomplished all my fitness goals, as opposed to, hey, I'm happy that I at least got some movements in and that was great, being the end goal. That's the trap, reification trap, that we all fall into. We basically outsource our feeling about a certain thing to a machine, a report, a dashboard, an LLM. And that reification is the first trap that we see people fall into, right? So how do we design frameworks that remind people that they are supposed to be at the driver's seat, right? And that means we can't incept ideas to them. So basically designing applications with AIs that the AI asks you deeper questions for deeper reflection and reminds you that you're in the seat of your own destiny and of your own decision making, of your own moral judgment, that you should not rely on it to tell you these kinds of things about the human condition. Now, that's not to strictly say you can't use a chatbot to diagnose or prognosticate certain things, right? When you are in fact analyzing databases and numbers and arrays and all this shit, and data structures. But when it comes to actually using it and interacting with it, the way some people have, with using it as like a therapist or as a friend or someone to validate whatever you're going through, that is sticky territory. And it's going to be messy, and thinking through that and thinking through future designs that don't fall into that trap is going to be everything. Yeah. Anyway, so I'll shut up with that. I do have the project finished and I will share it in future videos. But with that being said, thank you so much for joining me in this epically long fucking rant. I love you all. Thank you.